My fiancée demanded I send my kids to boarding school so her alcoholic brother could live in my house. I ended the engagement. And then her brother stole $8,000 from her and vanished, leaving her with nothing. I'm 38 years old. I'm a single father of two incredible kids, Samuel, who's 12, and Natalie, who's 10. And what happened to me last year basically showed me that I trusted the wrong person and almost ruined my children's lives by not seeing the warning signs in time. I guess I should start from the beginning, when I met Christine, because looking back now, the red flags were there from the start. I just was so desperate for my kids to have a mother figure again that I didn't want to see them. My wife died about 4 years ago, ovarian cancer, and it was devastating for all of us, but especially for the kids because they were so young when it happened, you know. Samuel was 8, and Natalie was barely 6. The first 2 years were brutal. Honestly, I was working full-time in civil engineering, trying to keep the house running, to be present for them, to be mom and dad at the same time. And most days I felt like I was drowning. But little by little we found our rhythm, the three of us together. We created our routines, our new traditions. And we got to a point where, I don't know, I felt like we were okay, that we could keep going like this. I wasn't looking for a relationship, not at all. But then I met Christine at a barbecue that a friend of mine from work organized. I think it was in May last year. And she seemed genuinely interesting. She was fun, made me laugh after so long of just being in survival mode, and when I told her I had 2 kids, she didn't run away like other women I had tried to date before. At first, everything was perfect, like too perfect now that I think about it. Christine was 34, worked in marketing or something like that, had never been married or had kids, but she said she'd always wanted a family. The first dates were just the 2 of us. Dinners, movies, normal stuff, and after about 2 months, I asked her if she wanted to meet Samuel and Natalie. I remember I was super nervous that day, because my kids are my entire world, you know, and I needed any woman who came into my life to accept them completely. Christine showed up at the house with gifts for them, nothing extravagant but thoughtful things, a dinosaur book for Samuel because I'd told her he loved them, and an art kit for Natalie. The kids were a bit shy at first, which was totally normal, but Christine was patient, asked questions about their interests, played video games with Samuel, painted with Natalie, and by the end of that afternoon I thought, okay, this could work. The next few months were like a dream. Seriously. Christine started coming over more often. We'd have dinners together, she'd help with homework sometimes, we'd go to the park on weekends, and the kids seemed to be adjusting well. Samuel was a bit more reserved with her, which worried me a little, but Natalie had gotten pretty attached. Christine never tried to replace their mom, which I really appreciated, and she seemed to understand the boundaries of her role in our lives. By November, we were already talking about the future, about moving in together eventually, about what our life would be like as a family, and I was in love, or so I thought. I decided to propose in December, planned it all out with the kids. We went to the park where the 5 of us had gone many times together, and when I proposed, with Samuel and Natalie there holding my hands, Christine cried and said yes, that she wanted to build a life with us, that she loved my kids like they were her own. But then, like 2 weeks after the engagement, things started to change. Subtly at first, so subtly that I thought I was imagining things. Christine started making comments about the house, about how it was decorated, about all the photos of my wife that we still had in some places. She said things like, maybe we should redecorate when I move in, give everything a fresher look. And I thought, well, that makes sense. It's going to be her house too. But then she started with the kids' toys, with their stuff in the living room. With Natalie's drawings stuck on the refrigerator. She said we needed more adult space, that the house couldn't look like a daycare if we were going to have people over. I explained to her that it was a family home, that my kids lived here and had the right to have their things everywhere, but she insisted we needed to find a balance, that it wasn't healthy for everything to revolve around them. Then in January, Christine mentioned her brother Mitchell for the first time in more detail. I knew she had a brother. She'd mentioned him in passing before, but we'd never talked much about him. Turns out Mitchell was like 36, had been unemployed for over a year, was living in his mom's basement, and according to Christine, had problems with alcohol. She was worried about him, said he needed help, that his mom couldn't take it anymore, that he needed structure and a place where he could start over. I told her it was a difficult situation, that I hoped Mitchell would find help, but I didn't understand why she was telling me all this in such detail. And then she dropped it, like super casual, as if it was no big deal. She said, "I've been thinking that when we get married and I move in here, Mitchell could come too for a while, just until he gets on his feet." I froze when she said that. I asked her, "Wait, you want your brother to move in with us, with my kids, into our house?" And she said, "Well, yeah, he's my brother. Family is family. I can't abandon him." I tried to be reasonable, explained that I understood her concern, but that bringing someone with alcohol problems into a house with young children wasn't a good idea, that Mitchell needed professional help, not just a free place to stay. Christine got angry, said I didn't understand what real family was because I was an only child or something like that, which was ridiculous because my kids are my family. They're everything to me. But we left the conversation there. I thought it would pass, that it was just a bad moment. But it didn't pass. Over the next few weeks, Christine kept mentioning Mitchell, kept insisting that he needed our help, and started making weird comments about the kids, about how much space they took up in the house, about how their stuff was everywhere. One day, we were in the kitchen making dinner and she said, "You know, many families send their kids to boarding school. It's not a bad thing. It teaches them independence." I laughed because I thought she was joking, but when I looked at her, I saw she was serious. I asked her, "Why the hell would we be talking about boarding school? My kids are 10 and 12. They go to school here in the neighborhood. They have their friends. Their life is here." Christine shrugged and said, "I'm just saying there are options, that we don't have to keep doing things the same way forever." My son is very observant, always has been, and lately he'd been quieter than normal. I asked him I thought about Christine and he was silent for a moment before saying, "Dad, Christine told Natalie and me that we should consider going to a school far away next year, that it would be an adventure." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I asked him when she'd said that and Samuel told me it was like a week ago, when I was working in the garage and she was supposedly playing with them in the living room. I asked him what else Christine had said and Samuel looked down and said, "She said that when you guys get married, you'll need more space for adults, that her brother would come live with you and would need our playroom." I confronted Christine the next day. I didn't yell at her, didn't lose my cool, just told her directly, "I need you to explain to me why you're talking to my kids about boarding school without consulting me first." She got defensive immediately, said she was just trying to prepare them for potential changes, that she didn't see what the problem was. I told her, "The problem is that those changes aren't potential. We're not sending my kids anywhere. This is their home, and I need you to understand that once and for all." Christine crossed her arms and looked at me, kind of defiant, and said, "Well then, where is Mitchell supposed to live? Because I already told him he can count on us, that when I move in here, he'll have a place too." I couldn't believe it. I asked her, "You told your brother he can move in here without even asking me, without even considering that I have 2 young children in this house?" And she said, "I thought you'd understand. I thought that because you loved me, you'd want to help my family." I responded, "I love my children first, before anyone else, and I'm not going to put their safety or well-being at risk for anyone, not even for you." Christine started crying, said I was selfish, that if I really loved her, I'd find a way to make this work, that her brother only needed 6 months, maybe a year, to recover. I asked her, recover from what exactly, if he hasn't even tried going to rehab or seeking real help? She had no answer for that, just kept repeating that he was her brother, that she couldn't turn her back on him. Things escalated when literally 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, someone knocked on the door and when I opened it, it was Mitchell. I'd never met him in person, but Christine had shown me photos, so I knew who he was immediately. He had 2 big suitcases and a backpack, and he told me, "Hey, I'm Mitchell, Christine's brother. I'm here to move in." I just stood there in absolute shock and said, "Excuse me, what?" And he repeated, "I'm here to move in. Christine told me you guys had already arranged everything, that I have a room here." I called Christine immediately. She was supposedly at the grocery store. And when she answered, I asked her, "Did you tell your brother to move in today without telling me anything?" And she stuttered something about it being a misunderstanding, that Mitchell had jumped the gun, but that we still needed to talk about making space for him. I told Mitchell there had been a misunderstanding, that he couldn't stay, that Christine and I hadn't agreed to anything. He got angry, started saying that his sister had promised him, that he'd already left his mom's house, that he had nowhere to go. He smelled like alcohol. It was like 2 in the afternoon and he already smelled like beer or something. And I thought, this guy wants to live with my kids. I don't even know him and he's already drunk on a Saturday afternoon. I told him, I'm really sorry about your situation, but this isn't your house and you can't stay here. He pushed me a little, kind of aggressive, and said, Who do you think you are? Christine told me this would be my room, and he pointed upstairs, toward the kids' playroom. I had to close the door in his face and lock it because he wouldn't leave. He stood there knocking for like 5 more minutes, yelling that we were liars and that his sister had promised him. When Christine arrived half an hour later, she was furious with me. She said, I'd been rude to Mitchell. How dare I close the door on her brother? I yelled at her. Your brother came to my house drunk, expecting to move in without my consent, pushing me and demanding my kid's room. What did you expect me to do? Invite him for tea? She started crying again, saying I didn't understand, that Mitchell was desperate, that he needed help. I told her, Christine, listen to me very carefully. I'm not going to send my kids to boarding school so your alcoholic brother can move in here. That's never going to happen. And if you can't accept that, then we need to end this now. I thought maybe that would make her see reason, that she'd choose our relationship, that she'd choose the kids over her irresponsible brother. But she looked me straight in the eye and said, Then, I guess we need to end this because I'm not going to abandon Mitchell. I stood there, unable to believe what I was hearing. I told her, You're choosing your brother, who won't even try to help himself, over me and my kids. And she responded, I'm choosing my family, just like you're choosing yours. The difference, I said, is that I'm choosing to protect 2 innocent children who lost their mother and need stability. You're choosing to enable an adult who does nothing to change his situation. Christine took off the engagement ring and left it on the kitchen table. She said she hoped I'd reconsider, that if I really loved her, I'd find a way to make space for Mitchell, that the kids would be fine at boarding school, that many kids go and turn out better for it. I picked up the ring and put it in her hand and told her, Christine, get out of my house and don't come back. This is over. She left crying and screaming that I was a monster, that I was destroying our family, that I was going to regret it. I thought that was the end, that this whole nightmare was finally over. But I was wrong. 2 days later, Christine started calling and texting me, demanding that I pay her back all the wedding deposits. We'd paid like $3,000 in deposits for the venue, catering, photographer, all that stuff, and she wanted me to give her her part back. I responded that the deposits weren't refundable, that we both knew that when we made them, that she'd signed the contracts too. She threatened to sue me, to tell everyone that I was a terrible father, that I emotionally abused my children, that I was the reason our relationship had failed, and she followed through on her threat. Christine started posting things on social media, never mentioning my name directly, but making it very clear she was talking about me. She said things like, When you discover that the person you are going to marry is manipulative and controls their children in an unhealthy way, when you realize you escaped a toxic relationship just in time. Some of our mutual friends contacted me asking what had happened, and I told them the truth, that Christine had wanted me to send my kids away so her unemployed alcoholic brother could move in with us. Most supported me, said I'd done the right thing, but some clearly believed her and stopped talking to me. But the worst were the messages from Mitchell. He started sending me threatening texts, saying I owed him money too, because Christine had promised him he could live with us for free, that I'd ruined his plans, that he was going to make me regret it. I told him to stop contacting me or I'd call the police, and he responded with more threats, things about how he knew where we lived, where my kids went to school. I had to save all the messages and report him. The police told me he hadn't technically done anything illegal yet, but to keep documenting everything in case it escalated. About 3 weeks of this constant drama went by, me trying to keep the kids away from all of it, explaining to them that Christine and I had ended our relationship because we wanted different things. Without going into details about Mitchell or the threats, Samuel told me he was glad she was gone, that he'd never fully trusted her, and that broke my heart because my son had seen what I didn't want to see from the beginning. Natalie was sad. She'd started to get attached to Christine, but she also understood that Dad was always going to put his kids first. Then, on a Tuesday night, like 10 at night, Christine showed up at my door. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days, and was crying hysterically. She begged me to let her in, that she needed help, that Mitchell had done something horrible. I let her in, but only to the living room. I didn't want her going upstairs where the kids were sleeping. Between sobs, she told me that Mitchell had stolen all the money from her bank account, like $8,000 she'd been saving, including the money from the wedding deposits they hadn't been able to recover. Apparently, she'd given him temporary access to her account, so he could buy some things he needed, and he'd transferred everything to his own account and then disappeared. Christine told me she'd gone to her mom's house, but Mitchell wasn't there, that his phone was off, that nobody knew where he was. She begged me to lend her money, that she'd pay me back every cent, that she had no one else to turn to. I felt bad for her, I really did, because despite everything that had happened, nobody deserves to have their own brother steal from them like that. But I also thought about everything she'd been willing to do, how she'd been willing to send my kids away, how she'd prioritized this same brother who had now betrayed her, over us. I told her, Christine, I'm really sorry about what Mitchell did to you. I really am. But I can't help you. You need to report it to the police and let him go. I can't get involved in this anymore. She completely changed, went from pleading to furious in a second. She yelled at me that it was my fault, that if I'd let Mitchell move in with us, none of this would have happened, that he'd stolen the money because he was desperate and I hadn't wanted to help. I said, are you listening to yourself? You're blaming me for your brother's actions, the same brother you were willing to destroy our family for? And now you see why I didn't want him living with my kids. Christine kept yelling, saying I was cruel, that I had no heart, that my kids were going to grow up being just as selfish as me. That was too much. I opened the door and told her, leave now, don't ever come back. If I see you near my house or my kids again, I'm calling the police. She left cursing, saying Mitchell was right, that I deserved everything bad that happened to me. I locked the door and stood there shaking with rage and relief at the same time, because I finally understood that I dodged a huge bullet, that, if I'd married this woman, I would have completely ruined my children's lives. I never heard from Christine again. After that night, I blocked her on everything, asked our mutual friends not to give me updates about her, and moved on with my life. I found out from someone like 2 months later that Mitchell never showed up, that apparently he'd gone to another state with the stolen money, and that Christine had to move in with her mom because she couldn't pay her rent. Part of me felt pity, but most of me just felt grateful that my kids and I were safe. It's been almost 8 months since all that. Samuel and Natalie are fine, better than fine actually. Our house is still our safe space, full of their stuff, their drawings on the refrigerator, their toys in the living room, exactly as it should be. Last week, Natalie asked me if I was going to look for another girlfriend soon, and I told her I wasn't in a hurry, that the 3 of us were fine like this. Samuel, who was listening, said, next time, Dad, make sure she really loves us too, not just says she loves us. And he's right. Next time, if there is a next time, I'm going to pay more attention to the signs. I'm going to trust my instincts and my kids' instincts, because at the end of the day, they're my priority. They always have been, and they always will be.